what is the Constitution?
The Constitution is what governs us, the United States of America.
We the people means that the power and the governance of our, great country really comes from the people. Do we still find that to be the case today? Like today, would you say that we the people are truly the governance as it relates to our great country?
I still say
Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us in AU Studios. I am your host, Dr. Miya Burt-Stewart with Atlantis University. And this week we will be celebrating, or we have been celebrating Constitution Week. And as we all know, in case we don't know, for those that do not know, Constitution Day is September 17th. And so here at Atlantis University, we have elected to celebrate the Constitution throughout the week. And as such, we've got a guru in the room with us. We've got one of our very own, Mr. Ken Kistner, and who will join in with me, and we will talk a bit about the Constitution. We will talk a bit about the origins of the Constitution and some of the nitty gritty. I guess get into some of the meat as it relates to the Constitution. But more so, we are here because we want to enlighten our viewers and our listeners, just to kind of remind us about the Constitution and allow us all to, if nothing else, be reminded about how important the Constitution is. So without further ado, I'm going to open up and ask my good friend Ken here. Ken, what is Constitution Day? But more importantly, what is the Constitution?
the Constitution is what governs us, the United States of America. It was the day itself is a celebration of the Constitution. It's also combined with another day called Citizenship Day, and they merged the two together because the Constitution does talk about citizenship in one of the amendments. So, but the Constitution itself, our Constitution, is, and this is an aside, is the shortest written Constitution. It's 4,400 words, and it is the longest surviving written Constitution in the world.
Okay, so now, amongst other countries, other nations, the United States, we have the shortest Constitution. However, ours shortest written. However, ours is the longest living Constitution established.
Written. Because in England, you could say they have an unwritten Constitution from the founding, when the Runnymede, the Magna Carta. So going on, but we have a written document. So that separates us from England. And then also, and how they did it was actually this Constitution that we are celebrating was not our first Constitution for the United States.
So 1787?
1787 was the Constitution was signed in Philadelphia, and then it went to ratification. But prior to that, the country was governed under the Articles of Confederation. When the colonies left England and everything, and they established themselves as states, then what was happening was the Confederation was a confederation of states, and it was deemed to be weak. It was deemed to be, what was the power? The federal government itself the central government was very weak. So what they worked on the Constitution was to develop a system by which it would balance. There would be a balance, and basically it was through some compromise and everything. And it was interesting. I'm going to go there. Ben Franklin wasn't a big favor of the Constitution. He signed it, but he always said that it would be, it's always going to be evolved and everything. But it was designed so it balances out the rules of the state. So in other words, under the Constitution that got established, that was signed and then ratified by 1788, and then in operation in 1789, it was set up the government.
Okay.
The way the government's set up right now, where you have the Senate, you have the House of Representatives, you have an executive body, you have the judicial. Both are equal. All the checks and balances that go with that.
Yes.
So every single one, one does not override the other one.
Now, there are three main functions of the Constitution, right? Three main functions of the Constitution. And so we know that the first one is it creates a national government,
right?
Which is what you were just talking about.
And defense.
And defense, yes, absolutely. And then also when you talk about American liberties or civil liberties.
Now,
yes,
you got when they did the ratification, said we're going to get into amendments and all that. So when they did the ratifications and everything in 1789, there were no amendments to the Constitution. It was just a document, and it talked about the structure of the governments and all that, and how everything was said. And it was this thing. Now, one of the first things that started, there's three words that are in the Constitution that we have. It's called "We the People."
We the people, yes.
Now, in order to establish a more perfect union, they did this, whatever. So, went on to "We the People." So everybody says, what's "We the People" mean? It basically says the government is derived from the people. It's not Congress.
Absolutely.
It is not a king.
Yes.
The power is coming from the people.
The people, yes.
And it also indicated that where it would be a unified country, unified people. So under the Articles, it was always considered states, because when they were writing the preamble, there was one of the, it was Morris, I believe, wrote "We the States," and they said no. So they it became "We the People." So those three words are the most important words of the Constitution.
Isn't that something? Those three words are the most important words in the Constitution.
Right.
Those three words, and as I'd like to just kind of reiterate, those three words are important because it sets I guess not the standard, but it establishes, right, who controls, right, and dictates how our country is ran, right?
It's the power of the people.
Power of the people. That sounds like kind of like an MLK kind of power of the people. I digress, but yeah. So it's interesting that that we kind of point that out, or that you pointed out. Those three words, three words, "We the People." And so, you know what? I'd just like to, if I can, so "We the People" means that the power and the governance of our, great country really comes from the people. Right. Do we still find that to be the case today? Like today, would you say that we the people are truly the governance as it relates to our great country?
I still say yes.
Yes.
I will agree that we the people, because it is. Without the people, the government will go. The people can rise up in rebellion, which is like when we had the separation of in the Civil War. But it was always "We the people." Everything is the people. If you ever look at how big those words are on the preamble, it stands out. Those three words, "We the people." But even with everything going on now, it's still the people decide the government. We decide our we decide our senators. We decide who's going to represent it. We decide the people. Yes, we do have that fallacy with the Electoral College, which I'm not going to go into, because the way the founders at the time didn't. They were afraid that the people would be manipulated to elect a single person, and they were afraid of that. So that's why they dealt to the Electoral College. Okay. Now we get back into this thing about the popular election of presidents, but that's something that's up for discussion, and again, it would be a ratification process. And by the way, one of the things that the Constitution does set up the ratification process for all the amendments.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm going to say something about amendments.
Okay. Well, I was actually going to get into the Bill of Rights and then ultimately the amendments. Okay.
When the Constitution was finally ratified and became in force in 1789, there were no amendments. The Bill of Rights didn't exist.
Right.
In 1790, it was Washington sent 12 amendments out that had been passed by Congress and sent it out to the states to be ratified. Though they did get ratified, and of the 12 amendments, the first 10 are what we consider our Bill of Rights.
Our Bill of Rights, yes.
Right to free speech, the right to free press, the right to freedom of worship. Right. Well, and then the Second Amendment, which is the one that we always get into nowadays, if you read it, is the right to bear arms. But the way it says, in order to a militia, there's certain wordings that's in there. So you can be a strict constitutionalist and read what it says.
Yes.
Or you can be,
read between the lines.
Read between the lines and everything. So that's what, and people say, oh, what the founding fathers meant. So you're not really sure. To me, I look at the Constitution as a living document. I think it evolves. It as we progress.
Well, it has, because we now have how many amendments? 27 amendments.
27 amendments.
Absolutely. We now have. Yes.
And we had 12 amendments for the longest time until the Civil War. Then you had a slew of 3 amendments come on after the Civil War, 13th, 14th, and 15th. And 13th abolished slavery in the United States. The 14th Amendment is a very unique one. There was 3 sections on it. It talks about about the citizenship. And I can read it. It talks about, on the 14th Amendment, a citizen is someone who was naturally born here. It can be, it made the slave citizens. It made, when the freed slaves got to be citizens. So it dealt with citizenship on doing that. It also deals with
a very important issue that we're dealing with today.
Well,
is
no, because it's born and naturalized. You're born and naturalized citizen. That's very important, because that comes up. Sometimes you hear it now being spoke to. A natural citizen, a child comes in. Someone comes to the United States, and a child is born here. They are actually technically a U.S. citizen by this amendment.
That's one issue. But the other issue that it deals with is
the fact of, after the Civil War, when with the 14th Amendment said that if you participated in an insurrection against the United States, you could not serve in the federal government. You could not have any positions. You can be, so it was to stop that anybody who fought against the Union from serving in government.
And so we know today we're dealing with that very topic, insurrection.
Yes,
right?
Insurrection, January 6th.
January 6th, 2020.
And the implications of that, what's happening. That's all being discussed. You have constitutional scholars talking about it. You have lawyers. They've gone to one of the case points on that.
We've got our governments at the highest level, our Congress talking about it. We've got our Supreme Courts that are talking about it. So. So when we think about the 14th Amendment, or when we think about each amendment, I think that there's something today that's happening that really, makes it stand out, makes it more relevant to today.
With the 14th Amendment, when they wrote the 14th Amendment, they also had the thing where Congress added, there was a stipulation there, Congress had to do it. So out of that 14th Amendment came the Voting Rights Act of 1964.
Yes.
So, because they had that right. Now, the next one came along, was the 15th right after that, which gave the voting, had to do with voting. And it says anybody's denied a bridge, no citizen's right shall be denied a bridge to vote. And the voting is something with the states, because there was a way that there's state right things and everything, and so that's a voting side of it. But there's also the federal side, but they're saying no rights can be abridged for that. At the same time, when they did that, they also said for the freed African Americans, they gave them the right to vote. Then afterwards, they had the right to vote, and then they started doing all later on. In history, things got, they had the right to vote, but they were stymied in a certain way to 1964, the Voting Rights Act.
All right.
And there was one group that left, never had the right to vote. In Wyoming they did, and I believe in New Jersey they also were given the rights, was women. And that did not get done. They got the right to vote in the 19th Amendment, which was passed, I think, in 2021.
Early 20s. Early 20s.
Early 20s.
Isn't it amazing, though, when you think about, our country, the United States, and when you think about the Constitution, you take time out. every day that we talk about the Constitution, right? Because we're not, in a history class every day. But when we take the time out and to have these conversations and to reflect, it's pretty amazing to hear some of these same things. I've heard it, we hear it, I hear it every year, right? Constitution Day is celebrated. I'm always at some event somewhere, whether it's Atlantis University or, one of the cities in the community somewhere. And you hear these, some of the same statements that you make. And I'm always not surprised, but I'm always touched or moved in some way by just some of the things that are said. When you talk about African Americans, when you talk about slavery, when you talk about right to vote, it's because we've been because we've grown so much, I guess, as a global community, not just a country, right? It just seems hard to believe and hard to fathom that, while it's been a long time, it still seems so recent, that some of these things are kind of just now coming about, right? They're not, but they are, if that makes any sense.
I think part of the things is like when things happen at the time, like in the 1800s, 1860s, 1880s and everything, there's time for things to happen was slow. Nowadays, it's instant. Boom, you find out, you pick up the phone, you pick up TV, you watch, and your computer, and you can see everything happening. So, things that may have been like saying discussion on segregation in the South in the 50s. It got blown up and everything, but it was all televised. So, but in the old days, you really didn't hear about it until because there was no news to talk about it.
And I don't want to harp on it but that's a part of why there were still slaves in Texas, because the word had not gotten back.
Right.
That
it was like a year later.
So, thank God for technology today. How about that?
Right.
Thank God for technology today. So in terms of, the Constitution, I think that, particularly America, I don't know that there's any other country as diverse as America. Like, there are countries that are diverse, but I think that if there's an ethnicity, if there's a race, if there's a culture, and for every single one of them, it exists in America.
Right. It's called a smelting pot.
Yes, we're called a melting pot.
Right. When you look at the Statue of Liberty and everything, and the statements that are, give me your tithe, your poor.
Yeah. And so, with that being said, I just think about how the Constitution has allowed for us to be such a melting pot. The importance that, our Constitution has played and continues, to play. Even in situations as recent as when our presidents change, right, and the parties change, right, and so of course some of the rules, some of the federal laws and rules change, right, so whether it's immigration or whether it's abortion or just whatever the topic is, right, I think that our Constitution is a part of what allows us to remain balanced in as much as we can.
Right. And it's you look at what is states' rights, what is federal rights. Certain things are guaranteed to the states. So
what can you do about that? Huh?
Well, you try to work their constitutions.
Yeah.
And that I always tell somebody, someone said something to me, and I said, no, the Constitution trumps the state constitution. Basically trumps the state constitution, because the Constitution is what governs everything.
Absolutely. And so majority rule, I think before we got started, I remember
majority
you
rules.
Kind of using those words, majority, minority rule, kind of. Touch on that, if you will.
Well, we have a statement that says majority rule and you protect the minority. But sometimes you have what's happening that people are saying now, you have reversed. You're getting the minority to rule over the majority. Like if you talk about, we're getting into abortion. Supreme Court did away with Roe versus Wade. Now, Roe versus Wade got into the Constitution because it did by the constitutional process of looking at the amendments and looking at what the rights of a citizen's free privacy and rights of privacy, which that's all evolved. So when they took it away, so now you're looking at where 67% or something like that of the American population is for the woman's right to choose. However, you got a small minority that's sitting there controlling it, and you're looking out like states like Texas and everything, and Florida even, where districts are such where the minority population is ruling, and they're governing now, and they have majority in that each of the state legislative, so they are now ruled by minority because they're overriding the popular will.
So, when I think about it, and our editor has put some good information up on the board for us, just to kind of close out, what we're talking about here as it relates to majority rule, that takes me back to, kind of to what I've said, just in terms of, how important our Constitution is. I think that in as much as it can, right, because you've said it, right, we've got the state, constitutions and the federal constitution, that balance is still so very important, right? That balance is still so very important. And so while it, while we use words such as majority rule or minority rule, it sounds like it's a big deal, and even in thinking about it, it sounds like, there is no balance. If there's a majority rule, there is no balance. But there really is,
there
right?
is.
I think there really is. Hannibal, he had some, we can get the screen back,
There it is.
So
limited government.
The 6 big ideas found in the Constitution, right?
Right.
And so limited government, that's subjective
yes.
as that's subjective as heck, right? You've got
But
some
Republican
groups,
representative government versus non-representative government.
Yes.
Checks and balances, which is definitely good. We have that. You
have that.
You have to have it between all the branches of government.
Absolutely.
The federal system.
Federalism, the federal system. Yes. Separation of powers. We've got that.
Popular sovereignty.
Popular sovereignty.
We the people.
We the people. And then 27 amendments. And as you said, we had 12 amendments. Right? Initially, we had 12 amendments. We had 12 amendments for a very long time.
Until about 1868.
Okay. What are your thoughts on additional amendments? Do you see that happening?
I know there's a push to abolish the electoral college. I'm not sure how that will go. It's that question about the people electing the president.
The popular vote.
Popular vote.
Yes.
I know that there's a compact going around on certain states that I'm not sure how many states have participated in it now, but I know there's a number of states that participated in it that said that whoever has their popular vote will get their electors, because we still have electors.
Yes.
No matter what,
each state has its number.
You have a number of electors. So really, it's the electives, not really. Who's the popular vote?
Yeah.
Is electors really popular vote? No.
No.
So you're looking at a series of things to change the Constitution that way. But again, it takes it's 75% to ratify.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a long process to ratify. In the old days, it took almost to a little over a year, 18 months to ratify the Constitution.
Okay.
It was.
So ratify or not, I guess the one thing that our Constitution does, and we hope will always do, is that it ensures the rights and the freedoms
of the people.
Right? It ensures the rights and the freedoms of the people. And so we're both, when you talk about rights and freedoms of people, we're both former military, right? So
both retired.
So not only
both retired.
Or I didn't retire, but same
retired.
difference. You retired. But, even in talking about the rights and the freedoms, right, that are guaranteed under our Constitution, right? So we get to talk about that from the standpoint of, what we've learned, academically, and then just, from just from what we learned. And then you and I, from a literal standpoint, right, we know what it takes to protect those rights and those freedom of the people. We've been on the front lines, right? War, even. So, I think about that, and I think about, why the Constitution means so much to me, not only from the standpoint of just knowing what it means, what it does, and its purpose, but someone having been responsible, right, for being on the front lines and being a very specific part of the Constitution as it relates to protecting those rights and those freedoms.
Right. And
of the people.
And most, like police officers and everything like that, firefighters, they're protecting us. Same thing. They're like, they're on the line saying they have the duty and they protect. They put the people first.
I agree. Although I have to say I am a little more towards the military. I am a little more, one-sided, not one-sided. What do you call it? Just, the
military?
Yeah, when I think about, protecting, but you're absolutely right. You've got our military, you've got our firefighters, you've got our police, right? You've got our, even think about COVID, you've got our medical, right? So we've got folk that are given charge for protecting.
We talk about rights. Let's talk about COVID. Vaccination.
Oh wow! Yeah. That was
my right. I can be vaccinated, or I don't have to be vaccinated. That's a choice.
Yeah. And thanks to the Constitution, we get
right.
to make those kinds of choices. The right to choose, right? The right to choose. So this is awesome. Every year I look forward to, having these conversations. I think that obviously you do too. I think much more than I do as it relates to the Constitution. But I enjoy being able to come back to the table, sit and talk to you. I enjoy going into our classrooms, being able to talk to our students, right? Being able to get their input. I enjoy, Atlantis University is a very international university. We have students from all over the globe, and even going into the classrooms, or as we do Constitution Week and we have all our information throughout the building, just kind of touching bases with students, and the way that their eyes open and the way that they kind of just take note of what that means and how important it is, to those of us that are natives. That I feel really good about that. Yeah, I feel really good about that.
Yeah, yesterday I was in one of the classrooms and we had a discussion, and there was one student who was I could tell she was very interested about, how about this? What about this? Yeah. And so you can't be political on it. So you have to be neutral on it.
Absolutely.
And it was talking about what constitutes impeachment. The high bars about impeachment and everything.
And we know that's another hot topic.
Because that's coming up, that's going on now.
Yeah, that whole subject, right? Whether it's the Texas and he survived it, or whether it's the president now and they're looking forward to putting, So the Constitution is it's a great document. I think that it's certainly our foundation.
And it's our living document.
It's our living document. But I think that when you talk about perfection, I don't guess that there's anything perfect, right? I don't think there's anything or anyone, that's perfect. So, as shown by the amendments, right, we are constantly a work in progress, right? We're constant work in progress. So, Ken, I want to thank you for your knowledge. I want to thank you for schooling me again this year. I always enjoy it. I always look forward to it. And then I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to our live podcast, to just sharing with us about our Constitution, what the Constitution is, and what Constitution Day is, and why we celebrate our Constitution, why it's so important. We're going to wrap up now. Do you have any closing words that you'd like to share?
I always look at it upon the Constitution. For me, it's like I said, it's been a living document. It's evolving. Everything. It's going to have its forward moments, it's going to have its backwards moments, but it's still that document that sets the tone for us. And and we may learn about it and then forget about it, but it's always back there, because I already know. Everybody talks, my First Amendment rights.
First Amendment right, absolutely.
Everybody knows that one. They also know the Second Amendment. But then you ask them about what 3, 4, and 5 is, and they, that's
get
the right.
A little rusty.
Speedy trial. Like one of them is speedy trial, one's about bail and everything.
Yes.
So we know certain ones, and
there's certain ones that stand out more than
they're
others
being used and more spoken.
Because they're more active in our lives. So again, we want to thank our listeners and our viewers for chiming in with us. AU Studios, we appreciate you. We always look forward to an opportunity to share with our listeners and our viewers. Live podcast is one of the ways that we're able to do it. We know that you could have been anywhere else, but you thought enough to be here with us. And so in closing, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we look forward to having you back for our next live broadcast here in AU Studios. Take care.